14 defeats, and now a late night near rumble. Kevin McCarthy has that passed him, and he is now Speaker of the House.
Did you hear him say when he got up there, you know, I never thought I would get up here? I mean, there was that moment, and you contrast that to the confidence that he exuded all day long, all week. Maybe it was sort of a feigned appearance to just kind of have a stiff upper lip. But in reality, he, until that moment, I think we were all thinking, will he actually become the Speaker of the House, including, of course, a brawl? Almost a brawl. I mean, the quickness with which he was elated, and then he was defeated and deflated, and then he was angry, and then all of a sudden they convinced at least Matt Gaetz and 4 others to change their votes to vote present, to lower the threshold so that he could actually become Speaker. And to see him run down to the well and say, hold on, we don't want to adjourn. All the red cards coming out.
Yeah, I mean, it was truly, truly dramatic.
I mean, we talked about this being a historic once-in-a-century occurrence. I think this will go down in history for so many reasons, not the least of which the 15 rounds it took to become the Speaker of the House. The idea of all of the negotiating and the jockeying behind the scenes, but immediately it was as if the, of course, minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, all of whom now are congresspersons officially, no longer elect, they knew where to pick up, just as McCarthy did, which is to contrast what the Democrats and the Republicans would now do going from forward.
Yeah, and it also went from chaos to the typical pageantry and protocol that we are used to seeing when a new Congress begins. It just isn't usually at 1:45 in the morning.
Although it is
East Coast.
It is January 7th, and this is around, I mean, these small hours in the morning, right, of what happened when 2 years ago on that sober anniversary, all Americans were really watching what would happen in these very chambers. I want to go right now to Melanie Zanona, who is on Capitol Hill. Melanie, you have been holding down the fort over there. What happens next tonight, if you can predict anything at this point?
Yeah, members are going to go home and get a lot of sleep, myself included, hopefully. Look, what's happening next is they need to organize the House, so they need to pass what's known as a rules package. But we are hearing that they are going to wait until Monday to do that. They've had agreement now after all of this resolution with the Speaker standoff. And I just want to step back for a moment, because for Kevin McCarthy, this has been a lifelong dream. He was working in politics his entire adult life. He was denied the speakership in 2015. He worked to court the conservative wing ever since then. He immediately got to work strategizing is how can I get the speakership one day? And that is the moment we are in after this messy, ugly confrontation today, all week. It was a roller coaster. He finally got there. But this is going to be a position that is significantly weaker than the one he probably envisioned, because in order to get the gavel, he had to negotiate away so much of his power. And we still don't know the full scope of the concessions that he gave away. I did catch up with Matt Gaetz briefly to ask him what made him change his vote. All he said is, I ran out of things to ask for. You know, there were rumors swirling around that he may have been given a subcommittee gavel. Kevin McCarthy denied that. And Kevin McCarthy did already give so much away, including this tool known as the motion to vacate the Speaker's chair, which means any single member can call for a vote to oust the sitting Speaker. So going forward, yes, Kevin McCarthy has gotten the speakership, but the tough task now begins, and that's governing. And as we saw, it is going to be messy. It is going to be difficult. He has these warring wings of his party that he is going to have to contend with every single day. Every single vote is going to be a battle and a fight, and so that is what we can expect for the next 2 years as Speaker Kevin McCarthy takes the gavel.
I mean, Melanie, I'm pretty sure that you've won the negotiation when you literally have run out of things to ask for and the other person is just giving you the yeses. I do wonder what the scope of everything they've actually been able to concede and get, what that will ultimately be. But as we're waiting to hear again from the new Speaker of the House when he'll address reporters outside of his office, we're getting some new reporting in about what happened during that very, and we'll just call it a heated moment that everyone leaned into their television screens to watch during that failed 14th vote. What can you tell us about that moment?
That was just such an incredible moment. I've been covering Congress for 10 years. I have never seen anything like that on the House floor before. But we are learning new details thanks to my colleague Annie Greer, who is in the chamber and was also working her sources to figure out what happened. And in this moment, that moment is when Kevin McCarthy realized that he wasn't going to have the votes because Rosendale had voted present. And so Kevin McCarthy was completely dejected. You saw him walk up the aisle towards where Boebert and Gaetz were sitting and pleading with them to vote for him. He was in a moment of desperation. And then you saw Mike Rogers coming up from behind the well, coming down the aisle. And this is someone, he's a chairman. He is a close McCarthy ally. He has been growing more frustrated and more frustrated with the holdouts all week. So that is important context. In fact, we are told that he had threatened to kick some of the holdouts off of their committee assignments if they didn't fall in line. So he was so frustrated, he came down the aisle, and sources told Annie Guerra that he basically said, "Matt, you're finished," to him. And at that point, Hudson, another member, came up behind him, sort of muzzled him and tried to hold him back so he wasn't able to speak anymore. But it really spoke to the moment of just how tense things were and how it looked like it was all falling apart for Kevin McCarthy. But almost as quickly as it fell apart, things then came together. We were told that leadership was then informed that Gaetz was a yes, and then they were, instead of motioning to adjourn, there's another moment of chaos where they switched their votes and they were deciding to do another speaker vote. And then what ended up happening is every single one of those remaining holdouts voted present. So just a complete roller coaster of a vote, of a day, of a week, really ever since the midterms. This has been a roller coaster for Kevin McCarthy. So a huge sigh of relief for him and his allies tonight.
Hey, listen, they are adjourning right now, Melanie. We're watching them on a motion there in favor of the 118th Congress now sworn into office going home tonight. Here with us in the studio, everyone. Let's listen in. Well, here with us right now in the studio, we got CNN Chief White House Correspondent Phil Mattingly, Tia Mitchell, Washington Correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and Liam Donovan, former National Republican Senatorial Committee aide. This is pretty amazing right now. Just the idea of being muzzled on the on the actual House of the floor, the threats. What do you guys make of it?
I mean, that's just a good friend, right? Coming up and knowing where that was going to head. The beauty of Mel's breakdown is how eloquently she was going through very complex details of what we've seen over the last 4 days. I'll try and simplify it to some degree. And I think at this table, we probably have several decades of experience covering Capitol Hill and covering that chamber in particular. Nothing about the last 4 days was normal. Everything about the last 10 hours was extraordinary. And the biggest question now is this just the way it's going to be every single day for the next 2 years? Or is this a moment where there's not going to be a kumbaya unity type thing, but people start to sit down and realize, all right, we're going to have to start to govern, as Mel was saying, and we're going to have to start to figure out a way to make this work. How you define making this work, I think, is a pretty open question right now, because I can just tell you that nobody, I don't want to speak for the people at this table, but literally nobody thinks this is going to go well.
Everyone's nodding.
Based on what we've seen. And so I just think there's a lot of questions that come out of it.
And I think that's right. We can break down, all the intricacies of the procedural things that happen, but at the bottom line, people have been watching from home all week, and to them, it looks like chaos. To them, it looks like a complete mess, and to them, it looks like, another symbol of government dysfunction, and it doesn't bode well for the next 2 years. Again, what Melanie said about Speaker McCarthy now giving away a lot of his power, further empowering those far-right members to really be obstructionists anytime they want to be. How is he going to get anything done?